Better get extra chairs, like.
Yeah.
Looks like.
Very exciting.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to St Paul's. Isn't this fantastic? We filled the room, which just shows how much interest there is in what we're doing tonight. And I want to thank the candidates for coming and sharing all that they're going to share. And I want to thank you tonight for taking time out to come and hear from them. This is such a great opportunity for us all. Just to introduce myself, I'm Tom Darwent. I'm the vicar here at St Paul's, and it is a privilege to be hosting this, which we're doing on behalf of Camberley Churches Together, which is a collection of all the churches in the town, and of course, we're doing this for the whole constituency of Surrey, Heath as well. I want to thank you for all the questions that you submitted, way more than we've possibly got time to cover, but we'll try and cover at least one question of the major issues, and we'll see where we go from there. Just a few housekeeping or practical things to let you know. First of all, if you've got a phone, which I'm sure you all do, please turn it onto silent or off. If you need toilets, we've got some at the back of church. If you go through that door there, turn right, you'll find some. There's also some behind me if you come through that door there and then go down the corridor, staying on the ground floor, you'll find toilets there too. And fire exits, one is at the back, and equally you can go out that way as well, the way you came in. We are not expecting a fire. Okay, I'm going to open in prayer. We are hosting this in a church, and I'm going to pray now for each of the candidates and in particular for this evening. So let's pray. Father God, we thank you that we can be here today. We thank you for democracy. We thank you that we have the freedom to stand for election, to share our views, and we have the freedom to vote as we see fit. So we pray that tonight every candidate would do themselves justice, that we would all listen respectfully, that we would learn all that we can. And we pray at the end on election day that we would have the right candidate, the best candidate as our MP going forward. Amen. Amen. Okay, I'm going to hand over now to Tim.
Thank you, Tom. So my name's Tim Cross. I'm having the great privilege of chairing this evening. We weren't too sure how many would turn up, but it's wonderful to see everybody here with us. And as we start, I hope you'll bear with me, because I just want to pick up a couple of points that Tom was praying about, apart from anything else, as I make an opening comment. Along with others in this room, I was in the army for several decades. In my case, leaving in 2007 after serving in various places around the world, including the Balkans and Iraq. And after I left, I became the Army advisor to the House of Commons Defence Committee, so I've got to meet many MPs over those years, and I've chaired a couple of these Hustings debates in the past. Two things emerged from those years. Firstly, we are extremely lucky to live in this country. More than half the world lives under the thrall of non-democratic regimes, many of them brutal. And secondly, every MP I have ever met has been doing their best to serve their constituency and our nation in Parliament. With rare exceptions, they are good people. And I say that because we're living in a world of diverse views and so forth, but we're also living in a world where division is obvious through social media, etc. I sometimes disagreed with their views, with the MPs I met, often, sometimes strongly disagreed. But compared to just about every other country I've served in, I reckon we're jolly lucky to have this sort of conversation. And we're jolly lucky to have the ability to publicly challenge the candidates and to vote freely to get rid of them if they don't then produce the goods. So the aim of the evening is to allow you to question the candidates who are standing to replace Michael Gove, of course, who was the representative for Surrey Heath from 2005. And unlike politics elsewhere in the world, I hesitate to say America, this is to be a conversation where we ask questions, we listen carefully to the answers, we learn from one another with open minds, and if I may be so bold, we do so with respect. As to the format, each candidate will be given 3 minutes to introduce themselves and make an opening statement covering their key messages, and we will then take questions. You should all have been given a piece of paper and a pen so that you could write your question down, and they've been flowing like a river out to Tom. So if you've still got questions, that's fine. Do still fill in the paper, hand them to one of the stewards, and they will bring them forward. And Tom is categorizing them, sorting them out as he said, and he will ask most of the questions. I'll join in occasionally. And if we run out of time, questions not answered will be distributed to the candidates to make them aware of the other issues that have been raised. And at the end, I will ask every candidate to speak for no more than 2 minutes to sum up and make any final points. I've just 2 rules for the candidates. First, please stick to time for the initial 3 minutes and the final couple of minutes, and keep your answers to the questions reasonably succinct. I have bought a clock, and I won't hesitate to step in if necessary. Second, this may be more contentious, but those that in your statements and in answering questions, please do not mention the name of any other political party other than your own. We want to hear what you will be aiming to deliver as the local MP here in Surrey, Heath. Maybe a wreath too. What you personally stand for, and of course, if necessary, what your party policies are on the issues raised. But we don't need to hear that you don't like the other parties much, or you want to have a crack at them. So please avoid that if you can. I have to say, I did think about fining you a £5 each time you broke this rule and raising some money for charity, but I decided not to do that. But I will step in if necessary. So that all said, let me introduce the candidates. Ed is the candidate for the Conservative, and I think still called the Conservative and Unionist Party. And Ed McGuinness represents them. Jessica, Naoma Patsy Hammersley-Rich for Labour. Al Pinkerton for the Liberal Democrats. Oh, I didn't get a round of applause. Thank you very much. And Sam Coggin for Reform. I should add that Elizabeth de Stanford-Wallet for the Heritage Party and John Campbell for the Greens were invited, but they were unable to attend for the evening. So, on the basis that we're going to start at this end of the table, can I invite the candidates to come up, give us their 3 minutes as their opening statement. Ed, over to you.
Well, hello, my name is Ed McGuinness, and I'm the candidate for the Conservative Party for Surrey Heath, and it's great to be able to address you all in the room this evening, and welcome to those joining online. Now, I know there'll be a lot of priorities in this room, and I look forward to hearing those as the evening progresses. But I want to focus on the future, and specifically around 3 areas for Surrey Heath. The first is on healthcare, and I'm proud that the Conservative government has secured funding for a new hospital at Frimley Park, which will secure our healthcare future into the next coming decades. The second is on education, and our children's future matters so much to me, particularly on special educational needs, and it's great to see that the Conservative County Council has secured a sponsorship for a new special educational needs school at the Lakeside Nursery and Primary School site at Frimley Oak. I know that this is but a start, but I believe it's a great sign for the future and how we prioritise that moving forward. And the third is around development, and I want to make sure we keep our area special. So I'll only support developments of communities supported by communities. Now, I've touched on the future, and it would be remiss of me not to touch on the past. And I know there will be people in this room who are angry and frustrated at the Conservative Party. And I get that, I understand that. My fiancée is an NHS nurse, and she reminds me regularly about the pressures that public services face. But I'm proud that the Conservative Party has supported people when it really matters. I'm proud that we supported people during COVID with furlough in terms of individuals and COVID support loans in terms of businesses. I'm proud that we had the fastest vaccine rollout in the G7, and I'm proud that we supported families through the cost of living crisis with payments to their energy bills. Have we got everything right? No, I'll be the first to admit that. But on the big things that really matter to people, I think this party has stood up. And just finally, for me, it's about service. Just down the road is the Royal Military Academy Sandhurst, where I commissioned as an army officer 12 years ago. And the motto there is serve to lead. And that is how I plan to lead if you select and elect me on the 4th of July through service. And I have a record of delivery, with national security through my work with the China Research Group. I have a record of delivery on criminal justice by getting a provision in the recent Criminal Justice Act to make desecrating war memorials a specific offence. And I've got a record of delivery as a charitable leader with a charity that brings people from all over the world to volunteer here in the UK to experience our culture and our values. But most of all, I know what service means. I've put my life on the line for this country, and that takes dedication. And that is the kind of dedication you can expect from me as your Member of Parliament if you elect me on July the 4th. Thank you, and I welcome your questions later on.
Hi everyone. As Labour's candidate for Surrey Heath, I'm delighted that an election's been called. It's time for change. Britain is a great country and it's been badly let down over the last 14 years. Living standards are down, crime goes unpunished, ambulances never come. Schools are crumbling over children's heads and sewage floods our waters. Mortgages and food prices are through the roof. It is time for change, and there's a clear choice at this election. More decline and division or hope and unity with a changed Labour Party. Labour has a long-term, serious plan to change Britain, stop the chaos, turn the page and start to rebuild our country. If I'm elected to be your MP here in Surrey Heath, I will work with you, the constituents, on issues that matter to you. I have loved getting to know people in Surrey Heath over the last few weeks. I want to work to rebuild the hospital in Frimley Park, look at the sewage issues, and I really want to help you and work with you within a Labour government. Thank you.
Hi, good evening, everybody. I'm Al Pinkerton. You may have seen my face on leaflets coming through your door. For that, apologies, but also I was speaking to somebody just yesterday who told me that apparently I was lying on her bed upstairs waiting for her husband to come home. So I realized that these leaflets are getting everywhere, even in the most unexpected places. I am standing to be your Liberal Democrat MP for Surrey Heath. I've lived in Surrey Heath for 12 years. This is a community that has absolutely embraced me over that time. I started off my life here in Chobham, and for the past 8 years, my wife and family and I have lived in Camberley. I share your love of this place, the incredible landscape that we have, the amazing kind of services and schools and all of those great things, but I also share your frustrations with things that have gone wrong. I sit, like you, in frustration at the junction of the M3 and A322. In fact, I don't sit. I then drive, of course, through our villages instead. I drive on our potholed roads. I struggle on our slow train into London. There's sewage in our rivers, the NHS is in crisis, and many of us and our neighbours are struggling with the cost of living crisis. And that's why I have 3 real priorities for our area. I want to get Surrey Heath moving again. I want the County Council to finally repair our potholed roads. I want that motorway junction to be solved after years of individuals having their photograph taken there and no meaningful action actually happening. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we could get our train line into London faster? Just think about the economic potential that could be released for our town if that could happen. It could tilt the balance in our favour, creating the business case for new flats, new shops, more footfall, and get our main market town, Camberley, moving again. I also think we need to have a far fairer deal for young people. We send our young people away from our local area to be upskilled and educated. We send them to Hampshire, we send them to Farnborough, but we also send them to universities far further afield than that. We don't have the technical colleges, we don't have the further and higher education here in our borough to keep our young people here. And then, of course, those young people can't come back because the accommodation is so expensive. We need a fair deal for our young people because currently we're losing out again on all of that potential. All of that entrepreneurial spirit is lost to other places, and we need it here because Surrey Heath is struggling. And finally, we need to get our NHS repaired. Over the past few months, I've spoken to 3,500 people. Some of you may be here tonight. And what I've found in my NHS survey is that there's a hugely variable picture in terms of GP access. Some people have fantastic access with really great GP surgeries. Other people can't see a GP at all. There are NHS dentistry deserts across our constituency as well. The future of Frimley Park is in doubt. That hospital is rack-riddled. Thank you. It has been delayed once. We need to make sure it is finally fulfilled. I want to do all of these things because if I were the MP, I would be my own constituent. I want to serve if you will have me. Thank you.
Can you see me? Good job I wore purple. Reform. I'm representing the Reform Party. I'm Sam Goggin. I've lived in Surrey Heath for over 32 years. I currently work at the college up the road, so I'm very well aware of education and its current limitations. Reform refers to the improvement or amendment of what is wrong, corrupt and unsatisfactory. And that's where we start today. The established parties have not been effective in all their promises and all their manifestos since about 1707, when Parliament began. It's about time that we were brave and we stood up and we were counted, and we as people of Surrey Heath had a voice, not just for our own community, but also for our country. The time is for change, and only Reform are offering that. Today, the two opposition parties are led by multimillionaires who are out of touch with the common people. I'm not going to use the working people because we're all working people. Reform boasts now millions of intellectual people who are voting with their feet, their experience, and now is the time for change. Something has to give, and local people are speaking out. Currently in Surrey Heath, last year in 2023, 453 new businesses started. At the end of 2023, 533 businesses did not survive. There's no actual evidence as to whether they were the original 433 that started, but we can see it in our high streets that our shops are closing. There is a big issue on immigration in this country, and unfortunately, illegal immigration is taking our resources. It's taking our local housing from our families. I work with families who work very hard, have worked hard all their life, and are now being taken out by their greedy landlords because the local council offers more money to house an asylum-seeking family than it does for our local people. This is not acceptable. As your candidate for Surrey Heath, and voting for Reform would mean that I would stand up for our local people, for the housing, for the potholes, for everything that stands for education. As my Labour candidate said, the schools' buildings are superb, but crumbling. The teachers are amazing. Our schools are some of the best in the country, but they are working in unfit conditions. They work tirelessly for low pay, same as our nurses and our doctors. As a resident of Surrey Heath, I have 15 apps now for my NHS. I still can't get an appointment. I'm waiting for a referral that was urgent in November. And when I finally got my details through the other day, I was told I was in the wrong department. It is bureaucracy and ineffective management that is causing the problem in our services, our railways, our hospitals. And it's about time that we changed. And we can only do this locally. We can't do it. If we can't do it locally, we can't do it nationally. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. I'm going to take the privilege of the chair to ask the first question. We've heard a little bit about this, but I'd like you, in one sense, to lay aside the politics and tell us a little bit more about who you are, why you want to stand as an MP, what drives you. Because an awful lot of people don't want to stand as MPs. So what drives you? Who are you? Give us a feel for that. Ed, why don't you start us off?
Okay. Like I said, my name is Ed. Probably don't have to keep repeating that. I'm from Northern Ireland. Grew up during the transition between the Troubles and the peace. And I really saw what politics can bring to a country in the most visceral sense. I remember my uncle being killed by paramilitaries. I remember being evacuated from school because of car bombs. I remember walking past car bombs, not knowing they were car bombs at the time. Obviously, I wouldn't have done that. It would have been pretty reckless. And so that inspired me to want to serve my country because it gave me so much. It gave me a good education and improved the economy where I grew up, and that inspired me to serve. And then like I said, I went to Sandhurst. I served in the Royal Artillery for 6 years, firstly as an intelligence officer when I went to Afghanistan, and my job was to basically find bad guys laying IEDs and stop them blowing up British soldiers. Most of the time I was successful, but unfortunately the terrorists only have to win once, and we had a few incidents out there that were very difficult to deal with. But the reason why I became an intelligence officer is because whilst I was at Sandhurst before I commissioned, one of my friends, Bobby, was killed in an explosion in Afghanistan, to the point where they had to put bricks in his coffin because there wasn't enough of him left. And that inspired me to want to do something to prevent that happening in future. And then after I was an intelligence officer in Afghanistan, I became a forward air controller and got to travel around the world, mostly with the RAF when the planes were running, and that was amazing. That was amazing. And then I met my beautiful fiance, and we're getting married in July. We're very excited to start our family together. And the reason I got into politics was to continue my service. When I left the military, I moved to Islington, where Jeremy Corbyn was my MP at the time. And we had a Labour council there, and Labour were in charge for about 30 years with the MP, the council, and the mayor, and they'd done nothing for the borough.
Well, I think we'll... yes.
Sorry, yeah. Yeah, I need to put a fiver in. But after that, that's what inspired me to get involved. And I also love cats and bourbon biscuits.
Okay.
So that's me.
Thanks very much. Jessica.
I think I, like most of us, probably got into politics wanting to make a real change and see a real difference. I'm from quite I'd say kind of like general family, but I had a lot of health problems when I was growing up, and saw the issues that left my family with, and I didn't want any other families to struggle like mine did. So when I was at university, got involved in kind of student politics, as people do. And from then on, I kind of was at university during the Brexit times, saw some of the real issues that were facing students across the UK and students from the EU that had come here to study and were really scared they wouldn't be able to stay and finish those courses, and wanted to get involved and wanted to do something to help. So got involved with local politics, and I've kind of continued from there, really. I really just want to be a voice for families like mine, and be a voice for anyone that feels they need one, that I can help, and if there's any way that I can help, I will. And I thought the best way to do that was to get involved. A bit about me, other than that, I also love cats. I have two, Woody and Buzz, and they're amazing. And I love theatre, and that is a big passion of mine, is not just the arts, but access to the arts, making sure that anyone that wants to can access the arts and get involved. It's a really great way to express yourself, and yeah, want to push that too.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Al Pinkerton. Is the microphone?
Yeah, it's fine.
So I'm an associate professor of geopolitics at Royal Holloway University. That's my day job. So I specialise in international border and boundary disputes. Sometimes wish I was a medieval historian, so I didn't have to rewrite my lectures every year. But I have the unenviable task of having to keep up with changing world events, which, as you will all appreciate at the moment, is extremely turbulent and challenging. That work has taken me around the world. I've been really lucky to specialise in British overseas territories. So there's most of the bits of the world that are still coloured pink I have visited at some point over the past few years. I've been to the Falkland Islands 4 times over my life. I was an official observer of the Falkland Islands referendum in 2013, for example. Last year, or maybe the year before, I was in Sudan, just before the full force of the civil war started to be felt. And I was tear-gassed on the streets of Khartoum. Sorry, Mum, if I'm telling you that for the first time. And it was really heartbreaking to see a country tearing itself apart, or beginning the process of tearing itself apart. I was trying to get to a part of the Egypt-Sudan border called Bertawil, arguably the last truly unclaimed place left on Earth. For a quirk of British imperial mapping, of course the British had to be involved somehow, but I didn't get there. In the greatest tradition of British expeditions, I failed to reach my destination, but for the most unexpected of reasons, and that was because we bumped into the Wagner Group. Some of you will have heard of the Wagner Group, the Russian paramilitary organization who were extracting vast quantities of gold from the northern desert of Sudan, taking that gold back to Moscow to fuel the war in Ukraine, and also training Sudanese paramilitaries to fight in the civil war as well. I had talked to a member of the Ababda tribe as we were traveling north, and they had drawn in the sand a picture of skull and crossbones, and we thought it just meant danger. In fact, they were drawing the symbol of the Wagner Group in the sand. So my work takes me to some exciting places, and of course I work with wonderful students and hear the challenges that they have, and the fears and the hopes of that next generation. And I've been living in Surrey Heath for 12 years. I don't know if I can continue just for 1 second more, but the
15 seconds.
Thank you. The reason I'm standing here or sitting in front of you today is because I think that Surrey Heath needs a really high-quality local MP who puts Surrey Heath first, because I think our area has fallen behind neighbouring areas, and we need to have a really powerful advocate in Parliament, somebody who will use Parliament to put Surrey Heath on the map, rather than to further a ministerial career. Thank you very much.
Hello, my name's Sam Goggin. I actually was born up the road in Aldershot to a military family, so I haven't served myself, but with my father I travelled around the world and was very fortunate to experience many places and many countries, even Catterick, North Yorkshire. It was a lovely experience and a place I go back to with fond memory. My family then settled in Farnham, but I settled up in London. I started my life after education as a journalist, and I worked for blue chip companies like Cartier and Martini & Rossi, where I looked after their public relations and anything to do with promoting their businesses. So again, very fortunate to travel the world. Came to settle in Bagshot about 32 years ago to have my family. And I have loved living here ever since. My 3 children are all grown up now, so they are travelling the world or working for the NHS or living the high life in London. So trying to pay off their student debt, which from university and getting good degrees now is very expensive. Proud but poor, I think, is my favourite saying at the moment. So I have championed the local area for many years. I was chair at the Bagshot Playing Field Association. I've worked with the NIMBY groups to try and keep green spaces for playing areas for children. I worked in local nursery education and was part of the government to policies to try and get free nursery education for all children up to 2 years old. I will still champion that it's important that they get some external support. I then needed a job with summer holidays, so went to Collingwood and decided that I would have a little summer job there. Ended up 20 years later, still there, and loving every minute of working with young people, whatever their needs and whatever their beliefs or abilities. I believe that Surrey Heath isn't as broken as some of the rest of the country, but however it is broken. Our NHS waiting lists are far too long. Our GP appointment system is absolutely disgraceful. Our railway line is hardly ever working. Our roads are full of potholes from electric cars that are heavy and don't pay tax. There's a lot. Our housing is also being taken, which we need. We need more social housing that is of fit state. So many families live in council houses that are not fit for purpose.
Last 15 seconds, Sam.
And it's about time that we work together, and I'm very much a local person. I know the local issues, I work with our local families, and I would dedicate my time to making sure that they were heard. Thank you.
Okay, so it's 8 o'clock. We're aiming to finish at 9:15, so we've got a good hour for questions. I would ask again that you keep a question, I'm very happy for you to share what you've just shared, but keep them a bit more succinct, if you would, in answering the question. And Tom will read them out, and I'm going to start with you, Jessica Ramey, and then we'll start the questions rotating around the table as to who goes first. Okay, Tom, over to you.
Okay, so we'll start with a general question. And this is really one question, just aspects to it. What is your long-term vision for this constituency and the country? What would society look like? And what direction would the nation take under yours and your party's lead?
Jessica.
So, as I've already said, it's been great to get to know constituents here in Surrey Heath. It's been so lovely to speak to so many of you on the doors and in public, and find out about the things that really concern you about the area. A recent conversation I had was a mum and her daughter, and they were really concerned about her daughter's start in life, but also being able to get into London. Really, actually, quite hard from here. Train lines are not fit for purpose, and we had a really good conversation around what we'd like to do to improve that, and it would be really good for Surrey Heath to be better connected. That's kind of my first thing I'd want to do, is ensure that there are better connections to London, better connections to other areas that would be good to be connected to, so that you can get out and about, but also bring more people here to see the wonders of the lovely Surrey Heath. So I think that's my first thing I would do. In terms of vision and goals, in terms of long term, it's about repairing what's broken, as we've said. Frimley Hospital, repairing the damage that's there with the RAC, but also repairing our schools and our infrastructure. That's what's really important. It's really also important to my party. We want to be a party for change We want to change this country for the better, but we need to be able to develop some stability in order to do that. And that's what's really key and important to us, is ensuring that we are setting a good, stable vision for Great Britain as a whole to ensure that we can move forward and grow and prosper. We have a lot of positive points for Britain, and we want that to be achieved after July 4th.
Okay, Jessica, thank you. Al.
Thanks. Listen, let me start off with Surrey Heath. You've already heard something about my vision, my priorities, and I think that they probably reflect the community's priorities as well. We want to get Surrey Heath moving again. We do need to repair our roads. We do need to get our motorway junctions repaired and working effectively. We do need that faster railway line to London. And it's not just because they're nice things to have, it's because that they do something. They release economic potential in our area. They will get all of our community moving again, not just physically, but economically more active as well. We need that fair deal for young people because we need to keep their talents here. We can't afford to keep losing the next generation to other communities because they can't afford to live here after we send them away to be skilled and trained. We need to repair our NHS because there are so many people, and I know because I knock on their doors regularly, who are too unwell to go back to work. Again, we're losing economic potential from the economy because there are too many people who are not being seen in good time and languish on long waiting lists. In terms of the country, I have never known Britain more broken than it is today. It is not acceptable that we have sewage in our rivers. It's not acceptable that the NHS has got into the state that it is. It's not acceptable that people, even on good salaries, are struggling to pay their mortgages and to feed their children because interest rates are so high and because mortgage rates have crippled their household finances. We need to get Britain moving again. We need to get Britain growing again. Our economy is flatlining. We've lost 100 billion a year from our economy after Brexit, and whatever you think about Brexit, that is the economic reality of the decision that was taken. I do not underestimate how difficult this task is going to be. Whoever is going to be the next government has got one of the most mammoth undertakings ever in the history of our country. I hope that I play some part in making the decisions. I think I possibly won't in terms of forming a government. I'm going to put my hands up and admit that. But I wish whichever government it is well, because that government needs to bring us all together. Because another factor of the UK, and Tim, you said this right at the start, is I don't think we've ever felt more divided as a country. And I think that's partly because we have had a government who have sought electoral advantage in seeking to divide us.
Thank you. Okay.
I think the most important part for Surrey Heath is actually cutting all the bureaucracy at Whitehall and getting some money back into people's pockets so that we can grow our own communities. As I said earlier, our shops are shutting, our economy is low because people are having to go to London to work because there is no work in Surrey Heath at the moment, or very little. Independent businesses are going under because there's not enough, they're taxed out of the water. So I think the first thing that any parliament needs to look at is what the taxes are going to be. And now Reform are looking to give people tax breaks and actually look at raising the threshold to £20,000 so before you pay tax, which would give our youngsters also a way to get into the market, not just renting on huge rents, but possibly being able to get a mortgage in the first place. I think a lot of people at the moment can't even get a mortgage because they don't have a good enough job, their job hasn't got longevity. And I'm talking to the local people, I think people are really worried about their current positions and whether their businesses are going to still be here in a year's time, 6 months' time. I think we have to look at immigration. It's a countrywide issue. The people coming in on the boats are just a small part of it. The illegal immigration is taking our resources, and we're seeing it here in Surrey Heath. We have hotels that are full of people who are asylum seekers on genuine contracts to be looked after, but they're not being looked after either. The current government put them in a hotel and seem to forget about them. They're also entitled to be looked after. Our education system also needs to be looked at, right from our grassroots schools here. As I said, our buildings are falling down, our teachers are amazing, our schools are amazing, our children are amazing, yet the places that they are working in are unacceptable. Special needs, children need support, they need better facilities, they need more funding to support them in education, and it's important that we start that at grassroots. And then that is actually a countrywide thing, so that would be my bag. If I was ever elected, then I would be looking at education across the country to make sure it's fair for all ages and that everyone has access to education.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And just starting off with Surrey Heath, and then really come back to the three things I mentioned in my opening remarks, and that's healthcare, education, and development. I mentioned that my fiance is an NHS nurse, so she grounds me in the reality of the pressures that public services face on a day-to-day basis. And I'm proud that the Conservative government has secured funding for that new hospital in Frimley Park. It is taking a while to find an appropriate site because it's twice the footprint of the current site, but that will secure healthcare in our constituency for the future. And then on education, the demand for special educational needs places, particularly after COVID and the developmental pressures that put on children, has far outstripped the supply of professionals in that field. And it is a reality that it takes a long time to train professionals in that field, and rightly it should be. They need to be experienced people who can deliver well for our children. And whilst I wish we could have achieved this faster, I think it is a great sign that the County Council, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, have secured a sponsor for a new school in our community, serving 60 children initially, rising to 130 over a couple of years. Now, is that enough? Absolutely not. Schools should be cathedrals. They should be places where children can learn and grow and flourish and get the skills they need. But it is a reality that our public sector is under pressure from all the support that the government had to give through the various crises over the past couple of years. And I'll touch on that a little bit more in a second. And then the last point is about development, and that's really about our young people as well. And I've seen really good examples of development around our constituency, but we need to make sure we keep Surrey Heath special. And what is special about our constituency really is the green spaces, the wonderful areas that people can grow up in. I think if we did a straw poll in this room, everyone in this room would say that they want their kids and grandkids to grow up in the areas that they did. They wanted to experience that special environment. And so I will only support communities being built with appropriate services that are supported themselves by existing communities. In terms of the vision for the country, it's quite simple. I want people to have to care about politics less. I want people to be able to get on with their own lives. The state is bloated by the very nature of providing £400 billion in support for COVID and another £160 billion in support for the energy crisis. That creates a bureaucracy in and of itself, and that takes a long time to unwind. And like I said in my remarks, have we got everything right? Absolutely not. But we have supported businesses through COVID. And just one example here, because it was raised by one of the other candidates, in terms of business creation. Since 2010, the net number of new businesses in Surrey Heath has increased by around 3,500. And that is a testament to the ingenuity and entrepreneurship of the people of Surrey Heath, but also the environment that the Conservative government has created. But I want to reduce the amount of bureaucracy, reduce the amount of red tape, and reduce the amount of taxes that everyone has to pay. And that is absolutely clear in our manifesto. So that is why you should vote for Conservative on the 4th of July.
Okay, thank you. Okay, well, I have to tell you, that took us the best part of 15 minutes, so I'm now going to restrict you to a minute each in response to the following questions. Otherwise, we're only going to get about 5 questions. Tom, over to you.
So here's a question from the Christian community of the area. 3 of the local churches have been looking at the minor prophets, a part of the Old Testament this term. Here's a very famous verse from one of them, from Micah. It says this: "He has shown you, O mortal, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you? To act justly, and to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God." So the question is, how do your party's policies measure up against these standards of justice, mercy, and humility?
Okay. Al, you're first up. Yeah. And I'm timing you from now.
Okay, thank you. Well, I think I'm very proud to say that I think I can see Liberal Democrat values reflected very closely in those words, justice, mercy, and humility. I think at the heart of the Liberal Democrats, and at the heart of liberalism, I think is a requirement to find justice in society. That's what all of the great liberal philosophers believe. That I'm inspired by the work of John Rawls, the liberal political philosopher, who in his work asked people to design a society not knowing where in that society they would be. And of course, what people did when they were challenged with that so-called veil of ignorance, they created societies that lifted people up, that enabled people's talents to flourish, and which also, of course, allowed people to be successful. But it didn't allow people to fail. And that, to my mind, is the essence of a just society. And I think that is what I hold close to me as a Liberal Democrat. That is exactly the kind of society that I want. And it's exactly the kind of society that we don't have right now.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah.
So Reform UK is about fairness and about the common people being able to speak out and to speak up without feeling that they are saying things that are wrong, especially if things are happening to them. A lot of people want to be different. That's absolutely fine. Being different is good. The woke agenda that is currently out there, unfortunately, takes away people's individuality in some respects, because it's actually channeling people down paths that they think they should be going, rather than letting everyone be an individual. Humility, then, we need to be starting with the humble beginnings of the local communities and up to Parliament. We're currently controlled by bureaucracy in Parliament, by people who are elected politicians. They're political career politicians. They're not people who understand that there are communities that need justice. There are criminals who don't get served the right
minute,
sentences,
Sam.
and they don't get the right justice that they deserve.
Okay, thank you.
Well, given that the Bible is hundreds of thousands of words long, I don't think I could do justice to that particular verse. So I'll just touch on one, and that is humility. Look, as I've mentioned throughout this evening, I'm the first to admit that we haven't gotten everything right, and our leaders in our party, I think, are admitting that as well. But I'm the person sat in front of you tonight, and I'm the person who is asking for you to trust me. And with my background of service in the British Army, you cannot afford not to be humble, because every single day you're presented with great acts of bravery, moral courage, integrity, and discipline from soldiers and sailors and air crew who really fight for their country. So I understand what it means to be humble, and I've lived those values. And so that's why I'm asking you to put your trust in me as a Conservative sat in front of me here today.
Okay, thank you.
As a woman of faith, can I thank you for that question? It was really lovely to hear that verse. So for me, I feel that the Labour Party has consistently been a party that champions and gives voice to those that need it and need that voice to be heard, from repealing Section 28 to all of their work in supporting anti-racism movements across the UK. And I think that really speaks to the justice that my party believes in, justice for everyone and support for people that need it.
Thank you. Tom.
I have one question on Brexit. How do you think Brexit has gone, and what changes, if any, do you think we should make with our relationship with Europe?
Okay. Sam, you're off, yeah.
Brexit is not done. It hasn't been done. Unfortunately, a Remain cabinet with the Conservatives have not championed the British people. We need to regain our borders. We need to regain our fisheries. We need to be able to grow our agriculture. We're currently still held hostage by the EU in a lot of our treaties that have...
Thank you very much. Can you just listen
The
rather than talk?
referendum, I voted. Surrey Heath was a vote to leave, 51%. I didn't make a mistake. I know what I was voting for, and I'm championing that we complete the full Brexit, that we give our agriculture back its rights to grow its own products in its own fields and not still be held hostage to, as I said, these treaties that have come out are still existent.
Okay, Sam, that's your minute. Thank you. Ed.
Yep, so firstly, I believe you absolutely need to respect the referendum results. No matter how you voted, you know, I've been to places around the world who don't have the capacity to vote at all, and we need to respect that result and just understand that. Look, clearly emerging from a union of nigh on 50 years, even more if you consider the predecessors, is going to have major frictions. But the British people voted in a way, and it's up to the government to deliver that. And I'll mention maybe two things that are positives about or from Brexit. The first was the speed of the vaccine rollout, which gave us a lot of flexibility.
Thank you very much. Let Ed carry on, please.
Hopefully, I'll have another 10 seconds.
Yeah, you can have 10 seconds.
Which gave us a lot of flexibility over that operation. I'd urge everyone to read Long Shot, which is a book about that. And then the second is on immigration. And immigration is too high, but from last year, this time last year, the most immigrants were coming illegally to the UK from Albania, and we were able to have a bilateral agreement with Albania, which wouldn't have been possible. And now that illegal immigration from Albania is now under 1%. And that's the kind of immigration approach that we need and should pursue, and is only possible outside of the European Union.
Okay, that's your minute. Thank you.
Okay, so we had a vote and we need to respect the decision that the country made. I want us to now look, and the Labour Party wants to look forward, and it's about how we rebuild our reputation on the world stage and how we work with the European Union going forwards to look at the deals that are made and how we can build our relationship going forwards post the vote.
Okay, thank you.
I happen to think that Brexit was a bad job done very badly indeed. It's left us, all of the evidence says, that we are 100 billion a year worse off economically than we were when we were in the EU. We have not gained control again of our money, laws and borders, as somebody once promised we would. In fact, we have higher immigration than we have ever had. We're 100 billion worse off, and because of the nature of the Brexit deal, we still do remain tethered, in fact, to many of the legal structures. we are in deep trouble as a country. We need to renegotiate our relationship with Europe. I agree that we should respect the vote. We're not going back into the EU anytime soon because the EU, frankly, don't want us. And I don't blame them, frankly, because we've been a distraction to them for far too long. But we do need to rebuild that relationship because we need to get our country growing again, and the easiest way to release 100 billion of economic potential back into our economy, which is, by the way, is an economy the size of the City of London, is to renegotiate that relationship, to improve our trading, to improve our diplomatic and social relationships with Europe, because I think that's what the future and the next generation want us to do.
Okay.
We're going to have two questions now from particular age groups. So the first one is from the young. What would each of you do to inspire the youth into politics and prevent youth apathy, as is quite evident in this room, the author writes?
Thank you.
Charlie.
Ed, you're up first.
Well, I still consider myself quite young, so it's a great question, and I actually think that this panel here is a young, youthful complexion to it, which is a really good first start. What I would say is, politics can change the world. I mentioned earlier when I was discussing my own background, there's nothing more visceral than seeing an event happen, like the Good Friday Agreement, that completely changes your country and makes it and turns it from a war zone pretty much overnight into a place that attracts investment and attracts multi-million dollar businesses. And you can change the world as well. So when I got involved with politics, best piece of advice I got was just keep volunteering for stuff, just keep putting your hand up, just keep doing things. And now I'm sat at a table in front of a magnificent bunch of constituents and being streamed live around the entire constituency. And that in and of itself is a huge honour. And to have the potential to be sent to Westminster to represent you and represent your concerns and your values, well, that just blows me away. And so just get involved and volunteer, and one day you might be able to change the world.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Charlie, for your question. It's a really important question. I'm really passionate about how we involve young people in politics. I didn't take it as an A-level. I wish I had. I think it's really important for as many young people as possible to learn about it in schools and to be talking about politics as much as possible. I actually know, I was listening to a podcast the other day of a TikToker called Grace Barry, and she is currently going into schools and talking to 19-year-olds and 18-year-olds who are voting for the first time about, so going to colleges, about their opinions and what they think needs to be done, and generally trying to educate the public. And I think it's fantastic. And I think more things like that. We've seen a lot of political parties on TikTok over the last few weeks, and it's what else we can do to go out and reach young people where they are and talk to them about those issues. And to me, is what we should be doing more of.
Okay, thank you.
I think probably the political classes should talk less and listen more, especially to young people. I've been lucky enough over the past 5 years since I first stood here for election to be invited to all kinds of youth groups, to brinies, to guides, to schools, and to talk to young people, including at Collingwood, where the amazing citizenship students in Year 9 blew me away in terms of their knowledge of politics and the spirit of activism that they had. I think there's no loss of appetite in young people to be really politically active, but I think they're so often turned off by what they see on television. The highly divisive nature of events in Parliament and in the House of Commons, I think it doesn't attract young people to that. I think they want to see people working together. I think they want to have people acknowledge that actually good ideas exist across the political spectrum, and perhaps rather than tearing people down, we should listen more. I'm really pleased to say that as part of my campaign team, we've got about 200 or 300 people out delivering leaflets. Yes, those things that are coming through your door. The youngest of whom is sitting in the front row here, a young, very impressive young man of 10? 9. Very active. And it's absolutely wonderful to see, because actually talking to young folk like this young man here, you actually hear a different perspective on the world. So 2 years, 1 night.
Thank you.
I'm very lucky to be working with the youth of today, and as my learned colleague saying, out of the mouths of babes come some very, very truthful and honest ideas of how we can revolutionise and change our corrupt politics system for good. And I think it is time for the youngsters to come and stand up. I know Reform UK is new. It doesn't have a long checkered history. It is about the youngsters coming into the politics, and it's their time now to come and talk to some of my learned friends and who have taken the mantra, who've got life experience in all walks of life, in the military, in the NHS. Come and learn, come and be part of it, come in time to make Reform the party that is actually going to listen to the youth and take their ideas and generate a better future for all of us.
Okay. Thank you. I'm going to abuse the chair position. I want a one-word answer. Do you think it's a good idea to reduce the voting age to 16?
No.
Sorry, just say that loud to people.
No.
Jessica?
Yes.
Yes.
No.
There you go. Split decision.
I work with the children. Not yet.
Okay,
Tom.
now thinking about issues at the other end of the age spectrum, this is a question. The UK population is getting older. Does this matter? And if so, what, if anything, should we do about it?
Jessica's up first.
So another great question. Yes, the UK, the age population is getting older. That's a great thing. People are living longer. Fantastic. In terms of what we should do about it, to me, it generally comes down to healthcare and what we do best to support people in that time when they are older and they maybe need different care. So I work for a national charity supporting people with the leading cause of adult disability. So we see people of all ages, but we deal with an awful lot of older people that need quite specific and complex care and support. And the fact is that the NHS currently isn't in a state to be able to support them, and that is because it is broken. There are 7.5 million people currently on the waiting list, and we need to get the NHS back on its feet, and Labour can and will do that. They want to have 40,000 extra appointments every week. The last Labour government left office with the lowest waiting list and the biggest patient satisfaction in NHS history. We've done it before, and we can and will do it again.
Okay.
Yeah, the population of the UK is undoubtedly getting older. It's increased. The population over 65 has increased by 50% over the last 40 years and is due to increase by another 30% over the next 30 years. So we have a large number and a growing number of people in retirement age. And that has implications for the entire structure of our economy. We have a larger number of older people, possibly not working, supported by an increasingly small working age population. That has incredible implications for the kind of care that can be offered. It requires us to get our care system working now because it's going to be under strain for a very long time. And I'm very proud to say that the Liberal Democrats manifesto puts fixing the NHS, puts fixing adult social care at the heart of its mission. It can't fix everything now. It's first steps for those who most profoundly need care, but I think it's exactly the right instinct. But I think as a country, we have to accept that the demographics of our country are going to lead to economic stress for a very long time, and we need to try and expand the economic base. We need to grow the economy to support that older population. You've all been paying pensions for a very long time. But the reality is, there's nothing there, there's nothing in the pot. That pension that you want to draw for the next 25 or 30 years will be paid by a far smaller working age population. Okay. These are massive issues that are going to have profound effects in our lives, and we need to have serious politicians with serious politics to try and figure these things out.
Okay.
I think Reform UK are going to be very quick to support and respect our elderly people. People who have saved all their lives, as you say, worked hard, secured their pensions, bought their houses, paid their mortgages, yet now are being heralded as people who need to give it up for younger people. People have been told that they don't deserve their pensions and that the youngsters are funding their pensions. That's not true. They worked hard for their pensions. When I started my working life, I told my pension would come at 60. I'm now waiting till 67. Our European friends are complaining that it's rising to 62, 63. So we're out of date. We need to be reformed. We need our social care system to be effective, not just our NHS, but looking after the social care of people who maybe are getting frailer, that can still live in their own homes. Our social care system for getting them to their GPs is broken, and it needs to be sorted, particularly in Surrey Heath.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, yes, it's clearly a reality that the population of the UK is getting older and is supported by an increasingly smaller, younger working age population. But let's look at actual delivery. So 10, 12 years ago, at the start of the Conservative government, there were reforms brought in for pensions. That means there is much less on defined benefit contributions and more on, much less on defined benefit and more on defined contribution. Now that's an entirely unsexy policy, but what it will mean is that for generations to come, people's pensions will be more fully funded and people will be able to support themselves. We aren't seeing that come through just yet, but in the next couple of years, that will take a lot of stress and strain off the public sector. So that is something the Conservative government have actually delivered on. There are people on this stage tonight who have openly admitted that they won't be in government, and they've quoted manifestos to you that give claims that they have openly admitted will never be enacted. But the Conservatives have actually delivered for people on that, but on reforms for adult social care as well. We need to do much, much more, but we're the only ones actually tackling this issue.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, the next question's on the environment. Addressing the climate emergency is supremely important for the long-term survival of humanity, making dealing with most other issues look like rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. How do the candidates intend to make a real difference in this crucial matter?
I think you're due to start, aren't you? Yeah.
Me this time. Listen, the climate emergency, the climate change, global climate change is, I think, one of the top 2-3 biggest issues affecting all of us now and for the future. And it's not just because things might get a little bit warmer, it's because of the implications of that global temperature rise. We've already heard tonight about concerns about migration, illegal, informal, however you wish to describe it. If climate change continues unabated, there will be mass human displacement in the future. All of the climate models say that's true. Look at areas just north and just south of the Sahara, sensitive, fragile lands becoming increasingly unable to be cultivated, leading to displacement. We have increasing resource conflict around the world. That will cause mass movements of people in the future. So even if you are climate skeptics, even if you don't mind the possibility of 2.5 degrees increases, even if you think that as temperatures go up, people can just move to Greenland or Antarctica, have a think about the human implications of that, because that is serious. And when there is mass human displacement and people are wanting to travel into and through Europe in order to find refuge, then I think maybe some people in this audience will begin to take that threat and that challenge more seriously. The truth of the matter is that Britain has got an opportunity to lead in terms of green technology. When I talked about Britain growing again, one of the ways that we can do it is by investing in that green technology and be part of that new industrial revolution for the 21st century. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Net zero, it's a lot of money, and the climate has been changing for billions of years. I think money wasted on schemes that have no effect on our lives, on our children's life, and possibly our grandchildren's lives, is going to be important to... I was talking to a geological scientist the other day who said for everyone to get as much electricity in their homes as they do today, everyone would have to have a wind turbine in their garden. And the expense of that and the maintenance of that is obviously unsustainable. The way to save that energy is impossible. Therefore, we need to be looking at fuel that is local to us, our North Sea gas, our fossil fuels in this country, that we can be independent, because we don't know what's happening out there. We've already been put through the Afghan war by the Labour Party, the Falklands War by the Conservative Party, and we're possibly not too far away now from another war, because obviously we are supporting the Ukrainians as well. I think fuel is very important. It's interesting that actual electric generators need diesel to make them work in the first place. So I think it is definitely a conversation that net zero is expensive and that money needs to be rehoused somewhere.
Okay, thank you. Okay, quiet down.
It's good that we've all livened up, but I think Sam owes £10 into the pot for that. Look, again, there's a lot of observations being thrown around on this stage tonight, but let's look at actual delivery. So the Conservative government over the last 14 years has reduced emissions considerably in this country. There were months.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
There were months last year where this country relied on energy from renewable sources from the national grid for the first time without any coal, oil, or gas being used. And so that is the record of the Conservative government. I work in investing now, actually, and how capital is invested in green technology is one of the areas that I focus on. And what is right is exporting your carbon to places like China and India might make us all feel better, but it doesn't actually make the world a better place. This is intertwined. This is intertwined with energy security and national security. We need to build more nuclear power plants. We need to take advantage of our oceans and our seas and continue to invest in wind. Because when we do that, when we become totally energy independent, that will have tremendous, tremendous positives for our economy.
Okay, thank you. Hang on, Jessica's got it.
Sorry, thank you. So yeah, thank you to whoever put this question in. I completely agree. We absolutely must do more on climate, and I'm so scared for the future of our planet. It's something that concerns so many of us, and in particular, I know it's something that really concerns young people, and we've seen that time and time again, and we really must protect our planet for future generations. The severity of this issue, I feel, has been ignored previously, and companies such as Thames Water have had free rein to dump sewage into rivers and damage our waterways, and we need to act before it's too late. So Labour will be putting failing water companies under special measures, and that is action you know they will take.
Okay.
Okay, next question. What is your message to women asking for single-sex services, sports and care?
Yes, Sam, you're
Okay,
on.
so I think it's absolutely important that women are allowed to change in a changing room that is for women only. I believe that as a biologist that we are inherently different. We're either a man or a woman, and that's determined by our grandmother. That's not determined by even our parent. So I think it's important that women have rights to stand up and be equal. And I believe that in sport, particularly, I don't think that men who are trying to be women should be allowed to play in female sports, because we are physically different, and whether we like it or not, that is a biological truth. Now, as I go back to before, anybody can be anybody and they want to be. I embrace anybody that wants to be different. But I think when it comes down to specific things like gender, then we are male or female, and that's it.
Okay, thank you, Sam.
Absolutely. Security for women, hard-fought rights for women is an immovable object for me. You're biologically a man and woman, and we need to be kind to those that are undergoing a gender identity crisis, but I will absolutely not capitulate one iota on women's safety and women's security and women's rights. And that's absolutely it, black and white.
Okay, thank you.
The first thing I want to do in this question is recognise my privilege. As a cis woman, I have never experienced what it feels like to be a person that has been born into a body that they do not feel is the right body for them. But this issue has become politicised and conflated, and we need to recognise that there are people at the heart of it. Cis women absolutely have the right to access safe spaces, as do transgender women, and that is vital. We need to make sure that people have access to safe spaces for them and the right safe spaces for them, and Labour will protect safe spaces. They have a long history of LGBTQ+ rights support, and that is something that is vital to me as a bisexual woman, and something that I think is really, really important that we will continue in government. And treating people with dignity is the first and most important thing within this issue.
Okay, thank you.
I feel like I have to kind of almost replay the 2010 election and say I agree with Jess. I think so when these questions are asked, and sometimes the intent is good and sometimes it's more malign, we forget that there are people at the heart of these kind of questions. And of course, what this question is ultimately asking about is about trans people's right to exist and be recognised, and also their freedom to exist. Their freedom to exist within society. Is there freedom to exist within society? Because trans people have existed since the dawn of time. They have existed in every continent, every culture, every tradition. They are mentioned in ancient Egypt, in ancient India, in Latin American cultures.
I don't want to interrupt you, but the question was about whether they should be allowed to take part in women's sport.
Forgive me, I've heard this question many times, and very often it's ultimately questioning the ability and right of trans people to exist within society. And so the question was about safe spaces. Because safe spaces, trans women...
Please don't bother to shout. Please don't shout out. We can't hear you anyway, apart from the noise. So just listen, please.
Thank you. Thank you. Trans women have been... This question often revolves...
Please stop shouting out.
This question often revolves around places like lavatories and changing rooms. In exactly the same way that about homosexual debates always used to exist around changing rooms, and lavatories in the past. I'm not saying that they're the same. I'm saying that that debating point, that particular space, has become crucial to both of these conversations. Everybody wants people to have access to safe spaces. Of course they do. But I heard Kemi Badenoch tying herself in knots the other morning when she was questioned about how trans people would be identified if they wished to access a lavatory. Would they have to carry
Okay, I think we've gone well over a minute. I appreciate
I know, and I've been
interrupted.
interrupted
I know you've been
many times.
interrupted, but I think
I think that everybody should have access to safe spaces, men, women, and trans people, and that is my answer.
okay, thank you. Okay, Tom.
Okay, a question about housing. And this is a shortened version of the question that I've been given. We had a number. How will you improve the availability of housing for young families?
We're back to you, Ed.
Yeah, so I've been around a couple of the new developments that are ongoing in Surrey Heath. I was up at the new deep cut redevelopment the other day, and you know what's really good about that is that it's a community. I don't want just houses built in the middle of nowhere with a road that connects into an A road, and you know off you go. It's a real community, and it feels like a community atmosphere. And knocking on doors around there's a real sense of ownership and a sense of place in that area, and you know that's the kind of new developments that we should be encouraging around here, not concreting over the green belt. Because that is what makes our constituency very special. Those magnificent areas of green and pleasant land that we all enjoy. And the Conservatives have put in place in our manifesto measures to make housing more affordable. It needs to be even further. I think we need to look at how mortgages actually operate in this country, whether we can get longer term fixed rate mortgages, bit like they have in the US, and maybe potentially 100% mortgages, because getting that deposit, and I know this from experience, is the hardest part. But I absolutely love communities which grow, but I don't like concrete monstrosities that concrete over the green belt.
Okay, thank you.
Getting onto the housing ladder is one of the hardest things you can do currently. I recently struggled myself, my partner. It takes a long time, it's hard work, and it's really tough for people to be starting out that way. And the fact of the matter is that the current government tanked the market and added money to mortgages, which is awful and has meant it's even harder for people to get onto that housing ladder. Labour want to get Britain building. They want to build 1.5 million homes, and we're planning that reform right away with planning reform. And we want to ensure that with that planning comes the infrastructure, because it's no good building homes if you haven't got the supermarkets, the doctor's surgeries, the pharmacies to go alongside them, the buses. You need the infrastructure alongside the planning, and that is what Labour will do.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think this question speaks exactly to the concerns of young people in Surrey Heath, where the average house price is £450,000 or thereabouts, and properties, if you can find one, move exceptionally quickly and very often kind of escapes your grasp. We need a whole new generation of high-quality, affordable social housing in the country and in our borough. We remember, of course, that all council housing was sold off in the 1990s and was never replaced. Every social house now is owned by various housing associations who often mismanage, frankly, that housing here. So if we want that fair deal for young people that I spoke about right at the start of this evening's events, then we need to build that affordable, high-quality housing so that young people can live in our community again. And one of the quirks of our area is that there's a huge greenbelt swathe that covers about 2/3 of our community, and large chunks of our land, which look very green and ripe for development, are owned by the MOD. So in fact, we have very limited space where building can go. So that puts pressure on space. That's what then, of course, leads to NIMBYism, because so often development has been inappropriate, it's been squashed into inappropriate places. But we need to get Britain building again, but appropriately and with all of the services that go with it.
Okay, thank you.
My experience with working with our local families is that, like Mr. Pinkerton is saying, that the houses that are falling down, the ones that are still owned are not owned, that are social housing, are owned by these housing marketeers who don't do the repairs. Therefore, people are living in accommodation, half of their accommodation that's available to them, because their rooms need serious renovation. There's nowhere else for them to go for social housing, because a lot of our workspace was turned into yuppie flats that were promised to people coming out of London, and again bought by people who may have had second incomes, be able to buy them, and then trying to charge huge amounts of rent that our young people just can't afford on their current jobs, their current wages, and also the huge tax that they have to pay when they earn just £12,000. So I think what we need to do is look at what we have already, let's repair our social housing, get it better fit for purpose, and get our families back in them, because a lot of them can't live in them at the moment because they're just run down and terrible. A lot of our office buildings being turned into flats are empty. We need to get them into the councils so that the councils can give them to people who deserve them.
Okay, thank you. Okay, it's 5 to 9. We've got time for 2 questions. If you keep your answers short, we might get the third in. So can I encourage you to be fairly succinct?
We're here. I'm going to ask 2 questions in one, okay, about the NHS. So one is, what, if anything, do the candidates' parties intend to do about the huge increase in the waiting list of those awaiting NHS treatment? So that's one part of it. The other is this. The NHS needs restructuring rather than lots of money thrown at it. Can you comment? Okay?
Okay, Jessica, I think you're first up.
I am first up. Thank you. So I think I've alluded to this a few times tonight, but families like mine have desperately needed the NHS a number of times over the years. I spent my first 9 months in hospital when I ended up at Great Ormond Street. So families like mine know those pressures and they know how hard it's been. And I never want to see another family go through things that my family had to. It's why I'm in politics today. And we know that things are awful, things are really bad. The NHS has been completely decimated, and there are, as we said, 7.5 million people on that waiting list. And as I've said before, my party really does want to get it back on its feet. And the way to do that is through providing 40,000 extra appointments a week. We want to make sure that the app is fit for purpose and useful and good and easy to access. And we want to make sure that Labour and government does what it did before and ensures the NHS is great for people.
Could you just comment on whether it's more money or
Yes.
a restructuring that is required?
I think it's a bit of both. I think, obviously, it's great to have more money. There's no magic money tree. So it's about how we find that money. But restructuring, I work very closely with the NHS in my current job. I've been in my current role for 2 years and I've seen 3 restructures of the NHS. So I think restructuring, yes, it's really important, but it needs to be done right and it needs to be done well,
Okay.
because it will just lead to another one.
Thank you.
Yeah, first of all, let me take on the premise of the question, that management and money. Britain spends less, and this is absolutely objective fact, Britain spends less on its national healthcare than many other European countries, and yet we expect to have exactly the same kind of experience of our healthcare system as the best European healthcare systems. Unless you put more money in, we will not get the kind of experience that you might be looking for. The second big point is that the NHS spends about 1% of its budget on management. That is far less than the very best healthcare systems in the world, which spend about 3.5% on management. So if anything, we should probably be spending a little bit more money on managing the doctors and nurses and acquisition of medicines and ordering and structuring our NHS to make it efficient and effective, as well as spending more money on the doctors and nurses who serve us. The other key point is that our NHS will not get better, we will not see more people, we will not tackle those waiting lists until we get people moving through the system. Again, and currently we've got severe blockages in the system because people languish in hospital for a very long time because they have got no social care to move on to. They cannot then be looked after back in their homes afterwards. So we do need more doctors, we do need more money, we do need better and more effective management, we do need to get people through the system, and that can only happen with investment in adult social care. And I'm pleased to say that the Lib Dem manifesto proposes all of those things.
Okay, thank you.
Well, Reform are going to look at the NHS and the bureaucracy, whether I disagree with you. A lot of money is paid on the bureaucracy and the new app systems. I have people who I know earn £1,000 a day as a contractor to create IT in hospitals and sits at home and does nothing. So I think we need to open up the GPs. We need to open up our education system so more of our children can train as GPs and doctors and nurses. At the moment, they just seem to not be able to get onto those courses. If we can get the GPs with a face at the front of the desk so people can go there like the old days and make an appointment face to face, we wouldn't have all this problem about people being sent to the wrong departments. It would be people speaking to other people about waiting lists. And I agree, hospitals are bed blocked by an elderly generation who need respite care. Our care homes are expensive. They are not enabling our people to get that respite care, so they are staying in their hospital bed and stopping the opportunities for others to go in then and have their operations.
Okay, so
Okay.
thank you.
Well, thank you. The reason why that statistic exists with European countries spending more on health is because they have a different healthcare model. Germany has a healthcare model which is a third public, a third charitable, and a third private. So when you add all those things together versus our publicly funded, entirely publicly funded NHS, of course you're going to get those kinds of figures. But this is where theory